Hello, I'm Barbara Ann Dayton Moore. I was born in March 1934 in Salt Lake City, Utah. I was born into an LDS family, fortunately, and I grew up in a very humble surrounding. My home was very small, and we didn't have much, but we were happy as a family because we had each other. We had the gospel, we had love and things that were more important than material things. As I grew up, Heber J. Grant was the first president of the church when I was born. Next, I didn't remember him because I was too young, but I do remember George Albert Smith. And the reason I remember him is when he rode in the 24th of July parade to celebrate our pioneer heritage. He always wore his scout uniform, and I thought that was really cool. When I was a young woman, I remember David O. McKay as the prophet, and I thought he was marvelous. He was kindly, and I loved his white hair especially. When I was young, what I liked to do is play hopscotch. And I liked it so much when I was 8 years old, I broke my leg and I had a big heavy plaster cast on it with a metal bar to walk on. I still played hopscotch at the elementary school right next door to our house. And I also liked the teeter-totters and the monkey bars. We always had a dog when I was growing up, and I have pictures of me sitting in the front yard playing with my dog, and I thought that was great. Oh, another pet that I had was baby rabbits. Well, I'd get attached to them, but because we were poor, we had to grow a lot of our own food and raise things for us to eat. We ate the bunnies, and I would cry and eat them at the same time. But it was kind of a sad situation. One of the favorite things we used to like to do is at Christmas time, we'd all get together and take part in acting out the nativity scene. I'd get together with my uncles and cousins, and it was so much, made you feel like it was really Christmas because we had Christ in our Christmas nativity scene, of course. I loved school, and my favorite subject was reading. And I still love to read. Today I read many hours, and I enjoy reading. Even today, that's one of my favorite things to do. Growing up, we all had chores to do around the house, but one of the things I didn't like to do at all was pick raspberry bushes from the bushes that we had to grow our food on in the backyard. My dad would send me out with buckets to fill up with the berries, and I'd get all scratched up from the thorns in the bushes and the leaves. I just didn't like that. Today, young children are getting up and bearing their testimonies in primary. But we weren't encouraged to do that as young people. So I think when I really realized I had a testimony was when I was a late teenager. I had my patriarchal blessing, and I realized how special the gospel was for me. In my family, we weren't encouraged to go to college because, number one, we were too poor, and my dad didn't have a college education, and my mom didn't even finish high school. So I never had any, like today, kids of your age group will think, I'm going to follow what my parents do and go into things they like to do, or you have an idea that you might want to major in something in school. I think what I always wanted to be was a wife and mother, which I accomplished very well, thank you. My first job was something I dearly loved, and that was working in an ice cream store. Ice cream has always been one of my favorite desserts, so getting a job in an ice cream store was a real thrill for me. I walked 2 blocks to work in the store, and I earned 50 cents an hour. But I'll tell you, I thought I was so rich because I was able not to buy store-bought clothes, because before this, my mom had always made all of my clothes. To have something purchased in a department store was a real big deal for me. I was working there with one of my best friends, and she was dating this fellow, and they got their heads together and decided I should meet her boyfriend Meryl's best friend, George Moore. So they arranged a blind date for the two of us, and we went out, and I always teased him afterwards. I said, you wanted to date me because you thought you could get free ice cream and you'd like to, you know. He didn't deny it, but still, it was a wonderful thing because that's where I met my future husband. I remember World War II with Pearl Harbor. When that happened, it was such a frightening thing for us because we had no clue of what that meant for us as a country. And I can remember being very fearful of the Japanese maybe flying over and bombing us. And then, of course, I had older cousins who went away to the war, and I was afraid for them and, you know, afraid that they would never come back. And because of the war, we had so many other hardships on top of being very poor. I had 2 pairs of shoes to my name. You had to have special stamps to get shoes. And I remember you got 1 pair a year. You had to have special stamps for gasoline, sugar, and I'm sure a bunch of other things I can't remember. But as a result of that, we didn't know what treats were because we didn't have enough sugar, you know, to make candy, cake, whatever things there was. And so it just seemed like we were never going to have much in our whole life because when you're young, it seems like a war goes on and on. Even though it was only a few years, it seemed like it was forever for a young person. I remember when the war ended because it was such a joyous occasion, and as a celebration, I remember my dad said, you know, we don't have the money, but we're going to do this anyway. We all got in our little old car, we drove up to Yellowstone, and what a thrill that was. My real first vacation, I went to Yellowstone, and we took my aunt and my one cousin because her husband was still away in the war, you know, trying to get back from his deployment, but it was a fun trip. We got to go to Yellowstone and see all the natural wonders there. And I remember that even to this day, how special that was to go on a trip to see all the natural wonders. For young children today, you live in a very busy, chaotic world. Even though I went through the war, your things that you're facing today are equally hard in some respects. So I would encourage you to stay as close to the church and the prophets' teachings and your parents' teachings as possible.
What'd you like to do?
I think I want to play some checkers.
Oh, wonderful. Let's see if I can beat you for a change, okay?
Okay, cats.
I think I'll be a cat. Okay? Here we go.
No, that's dogs. The
Oh,
blue ones are the cats.
Oh, I forgot. Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
I think I'll move that then.
Okay, I'm going to move this way.
Okay.
Before we came here, we all lived in heaven with Heavenly Father and Jesus, His Son. It's where they taught us to choose good from evil, to be prepared for the battle to come. For Satan tried to destroy us forever, to make us turn from the things we were taught.
you're going to have to be very strong in the gospel. We don't know what the future brings, and there's always things happening that are frightening for you, I'm sure, today, even like the war was for me. But I feel like if you stay true to the church and the teachings, you're going to be just fine.